Okay, hello, my name is Jenny Drager. Today is Thursday, where I am. It is Thursday, April 28th, 9 a.m. Central in North America. And so this is our Implementing Acquisitions in Alma series, and this is the final session, session 6. And so the topic today is about automating the acquisitions process in Alma. I'm Jenny Drager, I'm a training services consultant, and with me is Cynthia Calacchio. I may have butchered that a little bit, I'm sorry. Technical support analyst out of our EMEA region. We are using Webex for this series. Remember, if you have any audio or video issues, even I've seen the audio issues pop up in the middle of a session where it drops off. Just confirm, if you ask in the chat, Cynthia will confirm that my sound is still good. Just leave and rejoin the session. The meeting is being recorded. It'll be made available to you on the series dashboard. And remember, if you have any questions, please choose all panelists in the Webex dropdown in the chat so that she sees it and I see it. And that's how I make my Q&A decks. Remember that I do also post to the series dashboard. So here we are, the final week, week 6, closing out this series. So our topic here is we're going to talk about automating workflows, and then we're going to get into the different tools that are built into Alma to help you do this. Import profiles using embedded order data. Talk about the EDI, electronic data interchange communication standard. Talk about real-time ordering options you have. Sometimes we used to call it real-time acquisitions. Now it's called real-time ordering. You might see references to either in our documentation. Finance integration, which we did touch on last week. And I have some of the same slides in here just because we're talking about integration. Monitoring jobs. If you are familiar with Alma, that shouldn't be new, but just reminding you where that is. So let's start with automating workflows. So we've gone through our whole workflow. Started with that bid record, ended with that invoicing of our materials, monies are spent, and we close the transaction cycle. Invoices are closed, PO lines might be closed, they might be waiting for renewal if they're a subscription. Now this slide was in the first week session. What are the benefits of using acquisitions? And I just wanted to remind you of these basic points. Remembering with that inventory creation, also the status is correct and displaying to the public and to staff where the material is, whether it's here, whether it's not in the door yet, whether it's in the back. Being able to put your hands on it once it is in the door. Remember tracking how your money is spent throughout the year, going back and be able to, look at different parts of the collection how you've budgeted your funds for that, and then also that cost per use information. Without acquisitions, you will not get that data out of your system. So what you've seen me do is a very manual workflow, but how can you take it a little further? So that first bullet is what you've seen me do. Now the second bullet talks about using different communication standards and files where you can manually import and export data so that you're at least not doing double work in both systems and, like an ordering system and an Alma. But you can even automate those workflows by scheduling that data transfer between systems. So where you're not having to do the import and export yourself, you can just schedule those in Alma. With ordering. Now, my first bullet here talks about manually creating an order in 2 systems. Like with Amazon doesn't want to play in our playground. We did have a bit of an integration with them, and then they changed their software and said, no, thanks, we don't need to do that again with us. So That's not currently something we could offer. So if you do use Amazon, that you will be doing that double work. But if you do have a vendor that is where you do that work and can put that embedded order data in your bib records, then Alma can take that data and create your purchase order lines, create your inventory to your specifications, etc. And we're going to see this. Or you can create that order in one system with a scheduled import or import to the other. So you can either create your orders in Alma and automatically export the data to the vendor, either via email or EDI. And it would again depend on what that vendor has on their side, or create that orders in a vendor system and schedule an import into Alma. And then with that embedded order data again in the bib records. As far as invoicing goes, you saw me create invoices manually. We talked about how to create invoices from a file, whether it's Excel or EDI. And so that's at least from an import. You're not building them line by line. Or you can also, with EDI, you can just have that integration set up with your vendor, and then the invoices come in. You open them up, you double check them, double check the prices, the funding, the counts, etc., and let it go. As far as claiming goes, you can have Alma, your very manual workflow would be have Alma notify you that a claim needs to be made, and then you go over to that vendor interface and enter that data. You could do a manual export of claim data out of Alma, create that notification in Alma and send it to the vendor. Or you could do a scheduled export, again, via email or EDI, depending on that vendor. So let's take a closer look at import profiles and look at that embedded order data, or EOD. So with this type of a workflow, you do that work in the vendor interface, Baker and Taylor, Gobi, Oasis, wherever you do that work. And then the order data could be manually imported into Alma if you download a file, or we can schedule it to be an automatic import into Alma. The benefit is staff is only working in one interface. You're reducing effort, increasing accuracy. And so the steps are: export the bib records containing purchase order and purchase order line data, that's that embedded order data, and then import it into Alma using a new order import profile. So if you've been working with cataloging, maybe you're importing bib records right now, so it's that same tool, but there's just a few more, there's a couple more tabs on there for different data related to acquisitions. And so in order to manage your import profiles, you either need to be an acquisitions administrator or catalog administrator. And you find them at acquisitions, import, manage import profiles. You'll see the same option under the resources menu, and they both bring you to the same place as far as managing import profiles. However, when you go to run the imports, if you want acquisitions profiles, you have to do this under the acquisitions menu. If you want cataloging, inventory only kind of stuff, you would load that under the resources menu. So you'll see that fewer import profiles show up because it only relates to that specific area. So let's go take a look. Acquisitions, import, manage import profiles. And so there's a number of them here. And I like to point out the status of active when we get into here. That's what makes it show up under this menu. If the profile isn't active, you won't see it there. So maybe you're still testing it. You don't want it to be quite available yet. So if I go in and exit, this is a new order record, or I'm sorry, a new order import profile. And so, you name it, whatever makes sense. So it's very clear here that it's for Gobi orders, print resources. We know the records aren't great. They're going to be brief records. So you do need to pick an operating or originating system from this list. And there is an other if your vendor isn't listed. Your import options, this is the manual upload of files, but if you do want to schedule it, you can set this to FTP. When you change that import profile to FTP, you have a couple different sections down here where I would have to say, am I only importing new or all files? To set up the scheduler, you just go ahead and look at that. And then do you want it, 4 times a day? Do you want it once a week, once a day at a certain time? Just pick whatever you like for that. And then under FTP information, what's the FTP server you're going to use? You can just use the Ex Libris one if you like and set up an input directory. Or if you have a different FTP site, you can use that as well. In order to do these, you do need to be either an acquisitions administrator or catalog administrator to manage import profiles. Sorry about that. That question just came up and I wanted to make sure I hit it because it's a real easy question to answer. Okay. Now the normalization and validation, this is no different than the cataloging rules. Indication rules might help you filter out specific data. Correcting the data using normalization rules that have been, all these rules have already been set up in the MD editor and turned into processes in configuration. That is how they show up in these lists. Match profile, again, no different than the import profiles for cataloging. How are you matching? Do you expect new records? In this case, if we see a match, do not import it. These should be new records in this scenario. So we won't be merging. We won't be doing multi-matches because we've already said don't do them. And then if there's no match, go ahead and import the file. Maybe these are reorders and you would have you could use a different import profile where there is going to be a match and then choose those other selections accordingly. Set management tags. Do you want, as these records come in, do you want them suppressed from discovery? Do you want people to be able to see them and know that they're on order? Suppress records from external search if someone's coming in to search your Alma. If you upload your holdings, remember Alma can send your holdings information to OCLC for you or Libraries Australia for you. So if you are part of those and using that functionality in Alma, choose that setting accordingly. Now we're going to be making inventory. Remember, with this new import, inventory gets created. And so here's, are you making electronic inventory? Is it going to be a mix of electronic and physical or physical? In my situation here, it's going to be physical. Here's our material type. You could have that material type if it is a mix of materials in a field somewhere in your record. And then maybe you're just going to have a library and location information right now, where to find it. And if there's nothing there, what do you want Alma to fill in? So that's that tool helping you, because when you create that holding record, you want it to be accurate. So if you've put that library and location in your vendor system, you'll have to create profiles, or I forget what they call them, and different vendor systems have different terms. But you would create the profile there. These are my locations. These are my fund codes. These are my libraries, etc., all down the line. So Alma will do that for you. And then to create that purchase order line, what's our PO line type? Who's our vendor account, because PO lines need vendor accounts, our pricing, what's our acquisition method? It's going to be purchase at vendor system. And then where to find, is there a reference, a vendor reference number, a list price? That's going to be in the 980B. If you need volumes, our PO number is going to come in, or is Alma going to generate those for you? Who's the default owner? The fund distribution, you can find that in the 981B. Even fill in your reporting codes by default, or they could be in that external system and they get imported again. You just say what mark tag and subfield, where to find those codes. So all that information that can be on a PO line is right here for you. So I'm going to cancel that. If you, couple things I want to mention. If you are part of a network zone, remember when you add a new profile, this environment I have right now is not a network zone. And if you do have a network zone, you would have a like a little toggle right up here about using network zone records or not. And also, if you have a network zone, there would be another tab here, and import profiles could be pushed. They could be created at that network zone level and made available to you on a network tab here. So you can just pull them in, because working with that network zone, you need to work with the network zone managers as to where data goes. I do have a slide about that. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. This slide is just talking about that originating system, that import protocol to schedule. You know, you can do that manually or you can schedule it, and to set the profile as active for it to appear under acquisitions import. And I did put a link to the documentation in here. Remember, you could always access the doc from in here. I could go to help for this page, and it'll bring me to managing import profiles right in here. So it's one of my favorite shortcuts in Alma. And this is actually, it's a really long page. It's a very thorough about how import profiles work. So very, very clear and helpful piece of documentation. Okay. Running the import profile. Now, to run the import profile, you need to be purchasing manager or purchasing operator. And you just go to acquisitions, import, click run, select the file for that manual, and submit the job. And how long it takes, again, depends on how big the file is. Generally, they shouldn't take too long. But remember, Alma manages the actual running of the files. It's not something that you have to schedule or do at a certain time of day. Alma evaluates how much energy, effort it takes, and will run it when it has the resources. So when you're setting these up, just create them in the sandbox and test them. You might have files that you've already uploaded into your production system. You can test them in your sandbox by using it. Test in production with a small set of, maybe 2 or 3 records, and then schedule it on that profiles details tab of the import profile. And you are done with those manual exports from that vendor system and manual imports. So a few questions that I get sometimes. What if the records I receive with my order are brief records? Well, that's just part of that workflow. So you get not a great record, but it's still a valid MARC record that can kind of hold the place until the good stuff gets here. So one thing you can do, when you go get your full records, do you get a file of them, or do you have to go out to like OCLC to go pull those records and then import them into Alma? So in that case, you would do a repository import profile to import those higher quality bib records. And then as those new bib records come in, those improved bib records, they would either merge or overlay existing bib records as part of the post-receiving workflow. Or you might work directly in the Alma metadata editor, and you could do that Z3950 search out to a number of different libraries to search for that better, higher quality record, and then again, merge or overlay the existing bib record. In either case, the inventory will be linked to that improved bib record, and it'll be a very smooth process for you. What if you get pre-processed materials including barcodes. Then there is another type of import rule called update inventory. And what that'll do is that will match based on the vendor reference number or the PO line reference number, what that'll do. And that would fill in your barcode for you. So if I do add new profile, and here's update inventory next. Again, a lot of it is, let me just put something in here. Whatever, I'm just getting something in here. Next. Still the same indication normalization rules. Match profile, so it's matching by PO line. So that's the match. How to handle the matches. Let's say it's physical inventory. Here, where to find that barcode. So, 952A. And anything else they may have put in there for you. Now, the library and location should be from the holding record, so you shouldn't need that. And the call number, if that, after you get this inventory, if that call number gets improved in the bib record, we do have a job where it'll refresh. So you import not a great bib record and it creates the inventory and maybe the call number was blank. We do have a job. I want to make sure you're familiar with this. Admin, run a job. And it has to do with inventory. I'm kind of riffing on this one here. Withdraw, update, it's an update one. Update, PO lines. It's like update inventory, and what it does is it's like a refresh. I'll have to put that in the Q&A. It's what it'll do is it'll make the holdings records go back to the bibs and pull that call number in. So if you've, put the better bibs in, just run that job on, make a set of those records and run a job to pull those corrected call numbers into the holdings records. Is it change? Update holdings. Is it this one? Just grab a set. Update, oh yeah, right here. Update call number from bib record. And so this will make this set of inventory go back, pull that call number in. I'm not going to really do this. But that's how that works. And then we go back. And the job was, oops. Well, I went back too far. Update inventory. Sorry about that. What if your library has a network zone? Well, then you need to work with the network zone administrator to just determine the workflow, knowing what bibs belong in the network zone, knowing what call numbers belong in, knowing what records belong in the network zone or not. Remember, sometimes network zones have minimum requirements for data, so you wouldn't want a really brief record that doesn't meet that criteria, which often is like an OCLC number. So you'll have to work out with the network zone manager how that works. And again, those import profiles could be pulled into your institution zone from the network. I did have a question. Is there a way to do that in reverse, pull call number from holdings to add to the bib? Not at this time. Not at this time. Remember, you have a profile set up to when a holdings records gets created. And I've never looked for that on a idea exchange. So I'm not sure if it's out there, but that's not something that you can do in Alma today. Okay, let's talk about electronic data interchange. So remember EDI, electronic data interchange, it's a communication standard between an institution and its vendors. It's a business to business communication standard. It's not only libraries, it's not ex libris's. And the flavor of EDI that Alma uses is called Edifact. The other one's called X12. So that's another thing to know between your vendor. You know, what Edifact's standard do they use? EDI standard do they use? Does your vendor utilize EDI communications? We have a list. So this is from the developer network. Go in here. Close that. Okay. So here is a list to the, here's a page in the developer network talking about EDI integrations. And so here is a list of vendors where we have done some testing and verification. And so that's why I don't put this list in the PowerPoint, because this list is kept up to date here. And then EDI communication should work with any vendor that uses the EDI message types used by Alma, even though it's not been tested. What information do you need from this vendor? If you're working with a vendor that's not listed, they can always send us a message and we'll work with them to get them on this list. We'll do that testing for you. Different workflows that you might be using with them. What a EDI interchange looks like, the different segments. And I also do want to draw your attention here, you know, the different workflows. So we've got more information about, oh, you want to do cancellations or claims or invoices, order responses, etc. Okay. So what workflows does the vendor offer? What workflow or workflows do you want to utilize in your library? That's all up, you know, to you to figure out. Again, with EDI, staff is working in a single system. Data transmission options are either manual or automatic. I'm always a fan of the automatic if that works with your timelines. And then you can do different workflows. You don't have to do them all, and the vendor might not offer all. So it's at your speed. Now setting up EDI and Alma from in the vendor record, you'll see that EDI information tab. And then this is a link to that documentation available in the CKC. So coming here into a vendor record, and it doesn't matter who I'm going to open up. And then here's that EDI information tab where you would put information about your communication back with them. So here is the vendor EDI attributes. What incoming messages are you taking? What outgoing messages are you sending? So maybe you're going to do the ordering via the import profile. So you're not going to send out POs, but you will do claims and maybe order cancellations. Again, if you're running the job, scheduling the job, if you're automating it, how often do you want the job to run? And then the FTP information. Remember, any questions, go to the help for this page. And I did also put the link to this documentation in the PowerPoint right here. So there's those outgoing messages, purchase order claim, order cancellations. Incoming messages might be invoices, might be order responses. So they all fall under this incoming. Files from the vendor loaded into Alma. File transfer also can be automated on that same screen. Now here is a suggestion. If you are using or pulling in invoices via EDI, you can set everything that comes in to either go under review or approval. Only do one. But so you could create a rule that sets all invoices created by EDI to either be an in review or approval status. And then what happens is when these messages come in, when these invoices get created, your staff, they don't have to do an upload. They just go to acquisitions, receiving and invoicing, and then they'll go either to review or approve. They'll pull up the invoices, just verify the data, the counts, the dollars, the funding, and move them through. So a very quick approval. And so I put the screenshot in here and you'll see this like assertion code. Invoice was created by an external system and needs to be reviewed. So you select that from a list. And then I have this invoice creation form options in, and I chose editor invoice message. And then the result is true. So send this invoice to review or approval, whatever I've chosen here. Oh, I chose review for this. So that's where you set that rule up. It'll make your processing of invoices go very smoothly, very quickly. No need to build them like you saw me do last week. So let's now talk about real-time ordering. So if you want to work in vendor systems, and whether it's print or electronic materials, what the two systems can talk to one another via APIs. So whether it supports different acquisition models, different formats. And so real-time ordering, there's that API sitting between Alma and that external system. It's a two-way continuous communication. So like you saw with EDI and the imports, that's all scheduled and it might happen every so often. This is an instantaneous communication between the two systems. The work is done in one system and shows up in the other within seconds. So you could create the order, let's say you're working in Gobi, and you create the order in Gobi. In seconds, the PO line, appears in Alma, and then Alma sends back, here's the PO number, and it sends that back to Gobi, and it shows up in Gobi. There's no files to load or schedule. Ex Libris does not charge for API usage for Alma or Oasis. I'm not sure how other vendors do that, but you'd have to reach out to them to see. I have a link to the Ex Libris developer network, post about real-time acquisitions, and then also a link to the documentation, including the vendor list supported by Oasis and Gobi. So if you're not using those products today, if you are, you're probably already familiar with these vendor lists, but we do keep this up to date in here as we are told. And I'm scrolling down this page because this is where I want to get to. What are the list of vendors that you can use on the Oasis platform and on the Gobi platform? And then I do want to bring you to this. The developer network talking about real-time orders. So this is one of our employees wrote this post, showing you the workflow, showing you how it works, and then the integration set up with the APIs right here. You can get a little deeper into this post. A question just came in, and it's very timely. Is there a way to review the data sent via APIs in case you have to troubleshoot why an order didn't produce the right outcome? The short answer is yes. Yes. I mean, because if you were doing it yourself, you'd have to look at that data transmission. And if, our support team would do the same thing if you do not. So yes, let me go back here. So that's using APIs. Now, someone asked another comment was made about Rialto to me. So Rialto is a tool that is, it is a ProQuest product, and some of our Ex Libris friends have gone over to, Alma people have gone over to work on this product. It's another ordering platform, and it's just sitting right here in Alma. So some of you might be here because you're wanting to, you're going to be Rialto customers, then you have to get Alma acquisitions going. If you haven't heard about it, so if you are a Rialto customer or going to be, it will be enabled in your Alma environment, and then this market option will show up. And so instead of working in Oasis, you're working right here in Alma to your selection list, your ordering, everything happens right here. This is like a kind of a marketing link about Rialto, and then this is the Rialto documentation in the Customer Knowledge Center. I won't be doing a series of Rialto specific acquisitions webinars. Part of the implementation, that team goes through Rialto, the setup, we do the setup for you, and the team just makes sure everything's working. I haven't been part of a Rialto project, but I just messaged the people that are. So at this time, I do not plan on doing a series of webinars. I'll keep that in mind though as a thought. Last week, we did talk about that finance integration. If you want to do it, I hope you do it. So that is linking back to your ERP, your business office. This integration, Alma would send, the communication would be via FTP, and Alma would send an XML file to that FTP location. You can use the Ex Libris FTP server, and then the financial system, or maybe your campus has their own FTP server. The financial system goes and fetches and processes that file, uploads the data in the business office. If they can also, it could be a two-way communication where that financial system sends the XML file containing payment status information, maybe voucher numbers, to the FTP location. Alma grabs it and processes the file. Invoice. So if you do have this integration set up and you complete an invoice, whether maybe you've pulled it in via EDI, it's sitting there, you've approved it, and it needs to be sent to the business office. The status of that invoice will be ready to be paid until that job runs. Alma puts it on the FTP server. And if you're expecting that communication back from the vendor system, it'll be sitting and waiting for payment. Or if you've passed, if you can disable this, and the invoice would go directly to closed. And these slides are the same ones you saw last week, these few slides, just setting up that integration, telling Alma to skip sending the invoice, or yes, Alma sending the invoice, and to skip that second step or not. So are you integrating with an ERP system? You'd want to go under config, acquisitions, general, other settings, and invoice_skip_ERP. And then for the second part of the communication, it's handle_invoice_payment. And the behavior you want in Alma. So here's that. You can do an orders export to a finance and orders import. I don't know how many people do that as well. And then synchronize fund information. And this is back to the developer network about the different finance integration options you have. The invoicing and the payment is way more popular, I believe, than the purchase ordering part, or common, I should say common. Let's go just look at this. So here's the post for the finance overview. You can see the different invoice export, invoice import. Those are the more common ones, but you have these other order export, order import, and synchronized fund information. And just link to these and give you more information here, showing you the workflow. And what the communication will look like. Monitoring jobs. If you've been working with Alma, if you've been running jobs, this shouldn't be anything new to you. So any manual or scheduled job, so even if you schedule these jobs, you can still always go in. So if something is wrong, first place to look, go look at the job. Once it's done, it's on that history tab and you can pull up that report. So that's a great way to take a look at what's been going on. But those scheduled jobs do show up in that interface as well. Let's get in here. Admin, monitor jobs. And let me stretch this out a little more than 24 hours. So they'll all show up here. Oh, wow. I jumped back. Let's get back to where we want to be here. This was doing this yesterday. Okay, we looked at monitoring jobs. As always, our resources, links to our documentation, links to the LibGuide for acquisitions. And remember, all of our documentation is indexed in Google. I'm always telling you that, always telling you that. I do want to tell you about, we have a change coming in the second half of 2022. So it's going to be how the PO line is displayed. So upcoming improvements to the PO line, they're designed to save that extra navigation within PO line management screen. And the whole, the goal is to reduce clicking, because that is what we hear, you know, it's too many clicks. And so what I did was I put a link here to the roadmap, because I'd rather you see this, and as it changes and as this gets updated. Now, how you find this is under Alma, product materials, roadmaps, and then roadmap highlights. So if I come back here, let me just show you here. Come on. Let me sign out of this so it looks like you see it. Okay. So if you're not coming in from this PowerPoint, I want to show you how to navigate there. So under Alma, oops, I think I clicked in there. There we go. Product materials. See, as you hover over it, you'll see roadmap and themes. Now the roadmap gets, so the latest one was January, and we have a Luna coming up. So we'll probably see another update to this mid-year. Once you do get into the roadmap, you'll see it's broken down now by different areas. So if we go into acquisitions, so this is talking about it here in, so the second half of 2022. It's giving you a little preview of what this is going to look like. So here's these facets for PO line tasks, purchase order line. So instead of closing the purchase order line to get into the detail or this list, it'll just appear over here. So you're not closing and leaving the screen and having to go back. So it's something we've been working on. So right now, in the first half of 2021, the libraries that are participating in the user experience focus group are evaluating it right now. And then we still have to finish our testing and make further adjustments before we release it, but keep an eye on those release notes to see when that's coming. Another comment I want to make, in case you haven't heard, Alma is changing from monthly releases. We've always done monthly releases. We're moving to a quarterly release schedule. And that starts, May will be our final monthly release. So this is based on, you know, feedback. So the May release will hit production on May 1st. It's already on your sandbox. And then we'll start having quarterly releases starting August, November, next, February and May. So we'll be changing things around our side too here. That's a big change. I'm keeping an eye on the questions. I don't see anything else. If you've got anything else for me, please bring that up, post it, and send it to all panelists. We do have a premium services team if you feel you need more one-on-one training, customized training, workflow optimization, configuration help. We have a team that does that. These are paid services, but you can reach out to Megan and her team at premium.services@exlibrisgroup.com. This is the final session for this series, and I'm going to be doing a review of it with my team. So any comments, suggestions you have, I've got plenty of my own running around in my head, but if you put those into the survey that appear at the end of the series, when you leave Webex, I read them all, my boss reads them all, and we take everything into account to improve what we do every day. Anything else for me? I have a question. Can we fast forward the calendar to have those order improvements, PO line improvements in place? It's a long time coming. It'll be really good. You should get on that focus group or work with the focus group. Then you could get them even quicker. Thank you everyone for your time. Thank you, Cynthia. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you at the next go around. You never know when we're always working on new content for you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.